Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayanam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambhitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So welcome to the Friday and Saturday series on Shri Upanishads. We are taking the bhaktisashtri for one of the batches. And in the last few classes, we discussed the introduction, the invocation to the Shri Upanishads, and we started with mantra 1. And in the last class, we took mantra 1. So today we will begin with mantra you can type the message Hare Krishna. Is the audio clear? Are you able to hear me now? Yes. Okay, fine. So today we will begin with mantra 2 of the Sri Isopanishads. Mani jijivishet shatam samah evam tvai nanyatosti na karma lippate naray. One may aspire to live jijivishet. Like mokshu means the ones who are desiring moksha is liberation, and mumukshu are those who desire liberation. Bhukshu means one who is hungry. Bubukshu means one who has a desire to eat. So similarly, Jiji Vishet means one who aspires to live. That's why Jiji Vishet it is mentioned. For hundreds of years, Shatam Sama, if he continuously goes on working in that way, Kurman Evahi Karmani. Now, that way refers to the way which is mentioned in Mantra 1 in the Ishavasya principle. For that sort of work will not bind him. Evam Tvai to the law of karma, na karma lipate. There is no alternative to this way for man. Na anyato asti. There is no other alternative. That means if you're living in this world, you have to live in harmony with the Ishavasya principle and work according to the Ishavasya principle. And that kind of work will not bind you. Only then you can aspire to live for hundreds of years. Otherwise, the more you live a sinful life, the more you're going to commit sinful activities and sinful reactions will come. So you to suffer those sinful reactions, you have to take many, many births. So this is a very strong uh, injunction here given in this mantra that how one should live with the Ishavasya principle so that he doesn't get bound in karma. Now, this is the link to Mantra 2. Mantra 1 spoke about the Vishavasya principle. Now, Mantra 2 speaks about how one can live a long life acting according to the Visha principle and yet will not be bound. Na karma lipyate narai. Will not be bound. Okay, now let us come to the purport. And as we have been discussing that the purport is divided into various themes and we will study the purport and the important themes, some concepts we will pick up, in the PowerPoint. So the first paragraph deals with how karma bandhan causes death. How karma bandhan causes death. So let us take this first theme. And I will now go to the Veda base and study the first paragraph. Okay, paragraph 1. The theme is karma bandhan causes death. No one wants to die. Everyone wants to live as long as he can drag on. This is a state of the jiva. And why is this? Prabhupada says this tendency is visible not only individually but also collectively in community, society, and nation. There is a hard struggle for life by all kinds of living entities. And the Vedas say that it is quite natural because we are eternal by nature. It's quite natural that we continue to stay as long as the living being is eternal by nature, but due to his bondage in material existence, he has to change body over and over. So the living entity is bound by karma. And one of the ways in which, karma comes is in the form of death. It comes in the form of death. And in the Gita, Krishna brings out this. He brings out in this very nicely. Anyone knows which verse in the Gita Krishna brings out that, ultimately one is bound to, karma is which points to birth and death ultimately. Anyone knows which in the verse in the Gita am I really referring to? Anyone can guess? how karma bandhan binds to one to death. So that verse is in 2.51, I guess. Yes. Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tektva manishana janma panda vinirmukta padam gachanti anayam. Karmajam. Karmajam, it is ja means born. So karma, when you do karma, there is action, there is fruitive actions. So there is reactions. But karmajam buddhi yoktai. But engaging in devotional service, phalam tektva. If you give up the fruits, then you don't get bound. Janma bandha. Prabhupada is saying janma bandha. Janma bandha here he says from the bondage of birth and death. Because birth means death, birth means old age, birth means disease. Vinir mukta, you will become fully liberated and you will attain that place which is free from miseries. That is Vaikuntha. Prabhupada says back to Godhead. So karma causes death, janma bandha. So that is the point Prabhupada is making here in the purport also, that it causes karma bandhana. The living entity has to work for his livelihood because that is the law of material nature. And if he does not act according to his prescribed duties, he transgresses the laws of nature and binds himself more and more to the cycle of birth and death in many species of life. So the living entity has to do karma to maintain his body. And that is the law. But he has to do actions as per the Vedas, as per his Swadharma, which is Varnashram Dharma. If he doesn't do as per the Vedas and Varnashram Dharma, then he is violating the laws by which he'll be bound. Now here a very important question comes, that it's spoken that, karma causes, death ultimately. Karma causes karma bandhan and death. It comes in the form of death. So I think it is here, or yeah, it is here. So my question is to all of you: the soul is eternal by nature, and the body is always dead. So ultimately, the misery of death, who experiences? Please understand my question very carefully. The soul is eternal, it is deathless, it doesn't have death. The body is always dead because it is matter, it is inert. So who experiences the misery of death? Who experiences the misery of death? One hand has been raised. Devahuti Kapili Prabhuji. Yes.
The subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego.
The subtle body is also subtle matter, and it is always dead. It's only just fine subtle matter. That's it. Just like the gross body. The gross is gross, which is gross. The subtle is also mind, intelligence, false ego. They are all subtle elements. They're always, matter, inert. And matter has no life in it. So who experiences death? Archana Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji Dandat Pranam. Actually, I was about to answer mind only.
Pardon?
My answer was mind, but you have already answered it's not.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Yes. Parth Sarthi Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranams. Prabhuji, the soul experiences misery. Only the soul experiences misery.
The soul is completely transcendental, and the soul is completely, beyond the realm of time and space. It is completely a transcendental entity. How can the soul experience misery?
Prabhuji, here you are speaking about those who are in the spiritual world, infallible. We are conditioned souls. We are, as per condition, we are attached to this body.
But still,
and
the
because
soul,
of attachment.
The soul cannot, the soul cannot be cut by any weapons. The soul cannot be, dried, or it cannot be killed. So, Who
Prabhuji,
experiences the misery?
Prabhuji, just like light, but if it goes through a red glass, then the light becomes also red. So how we are attaching ourselves to the different mode, we will experience misery if
Who
something is snatched away
experiences
from us.
Who
Uh,
experiences it? Who experiences
we, the soul, not the subtle body or the soul experience, because we are attaching.
quite sorry. One second. Where are you? Yeah. What do you say?
Just like a light through a red glass will appear red. So if we are attaching ourselves to sattvic mode, then we will be sattvic. If rajasic, or then we will be rajasic mode. Tamasic, then tamasic mode. So if we are attaching ourselves, we are making the mistake. We are attaching ourselves to a particular mode. So we are, when death is the end of the body, we are attached to the body. So we will be miserable when we are losing that body, because we are attached to that. And then when we are reborn again, so there will be misery,
Got it.
and then we will be attached to a new body.
Okay, got it. Anand Kishori Mataji, you have to say something?
Yes, Prabhuji, I was thinking it's the consciousness that identifies itself with matter.
Consciousness, but the consciousness is completely spiritual. Audarya, Gaurang Prabhuji, what is your thoughts?
Prabhuji, I think our thought is creating pain and all.
Thoughts, but thoughts are also material. So, as Parsarthi pointed out, it is very close. Who experiences the misery of death? The soul is eternal and the body is always dead. It is the soul which is attached to the body. It is the soul which is attached to the body which experiences the misery of death. Otherwise, if you are not attached, then you will not experience any misery. Because the soul is attached to the body, it is that soul only which experiences, which is attached to the body. And he brought it out nicely because of the modes. He said attachment to the modes. So here, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava theology, it is mentioned how the soul, which is transcendental, when it comes to the material world, it is covered by avidya. And this avidya, the Maya Shakti, has these two features. One is called as the covering potency, another is called as the bewildering potency. Avarnatmik Shakti and Prakshepatmika Shakti. Now just take the example of the man watching a movie in a theater. Now, why a person goes to watch a movie? Because he identifies himself with that hero and he wants to enjoy like that hero. And why a girl goes to watch a movie? Because she identifies herself with the heroine and she wants to enjoy like the heroine. So that's why we go to watch a movie. Similarly, the soul who wants to become Purusha, enjoy or imitate God, that pure soul gets covered by avidya and is put in this Mahamaya. And Maya has these two energies, Avarnatmika Shakti and Prakshepatmika. So just like you go to watch a movie, once you sit in the movie theater, what happens? Before the movie begins, the lights are cut off. There's no light, it's dark. So in that darkness, you cannot see yourself. So similarly, avidya gives a false identification that you are so, you are not now the soul, you are Purusha, enjoyer. So as in the movie theater, in the dark, you cannot see yourself because it's dark. You cannot see next to who is sitting next to you. So similarly, the Avarnatmika Shakti, it covers our real identity. And then what happens in the movie theater is the projector throws light on the screen. And then on the screen, what happens is the whole movie starts and your consciousness is pulled towards the movie screen and what is happening. And you're watching the movie, the hero and villain are fighting. And suddenly, just before interval, you see that the villain punches the hero and the hero dies, which never happens in a movie. But moment the hero dies, you suddenly get a jolt. Arey, what happened? Now everything what is happening on the screen. It has nothing to do with the reality. The hero is actually in his home enjoying there. It's just a movie. It's just some pixels which are displayed, and there's activity happening. But because that person, that boy or that girl who wants to imitate the hero or the heroine, they identify themselves with that character, with that hero, or that girl identifies with the heroine. Because they are identifying, that's why when the hero dies in the movie, he also feels hurt. So similarly, because the soul identifies with the body, the soul which is attached to the body experiences the misery of death. So the prakshepatmika shakti is the throwing potencies or the bewildering potency. So it pulls our consciousness towards matter, just like the projector screen, the projector light which is falling on the screen draws our consciousness there, and we become, not become conscious of ourselves, who we are. So this is how the two shaktis work in this on the jiva, which is the pure soul, which is transcendental to death, transcendental to this body. Another example is of the child watching a horror movie. The child has a desire to watch the horror movie. He wants the movie, and when he's seeing the horror movie, when the horror scene is going on, he gets terrified and he's going through a fearful experience. Now, why he has to go through this fearful experience? He can have very loving reciprocations with his mother, and his mother can, have loving reciprocations with him. But now his consciousness is locked in the, TV screen, because he has a desire to watch the horror movie. And that's why, whatever is happening on the screen, it has nothing to do with the reality, but he's getting affected. The ahankar, which is, because of the avidya covering of the ahankar, his consciousness is now turned towards matter. Bahirmukh, he has become Bahirmukh. Vaimukh, it is called. Whereas now because of ahankar, his consciousness is not turned towards next to himself, where the super soul is sitting. Or he can, the child can just turn and see that he has his mother, and he can lovingly have exchanges with the mother. But now he's going through this horrifying experience because of the desire to watch the horror movie. So it is the soul which is attached to the body undergoes the misery of death. Now, this child watching the horror movie is brought out very nicely in this Bhagavatam verse. Bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshata syat. Ishad apetasya viprayo smriti. Tan maya yato buddha abhajetam bhaktekesham guru devatma. For the jivas averse to the Lord, Ishad apetasya, there will be samskar consisting of identity with body. Dvitiya abhinivesh. Dvitiya, because his consciousness is caught up in the Bhairanga Shakti, and lack of identity of the soul. Viprayo asmriti, lack of identity of the soul. Because of his absorption in the material coverings on the soul. Abhi niveshat syat. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's translation of this verse. Arising from the Lord's Maya. Tan Maya yato. Therefore, Atha, the intelligent person, Buddha, taking Guru as his Lord and very self, Isham Guru Devatma, should firstly worship, bhaje the Lord Tam with pure bhakti, bhakti kaya. So here the solution of our consciousness, which is Vaimukha, is to turn the consciousness towards the Lord. That turning of the consciousness is only by the process of bhakti. And that bhakti, bhajan means bhaje, this is the abhidaya. And when we practice pure bhakti and turn our consciousness to the Lord, then we'll be free from this maya. Then we'll be free from the misery of death. So that's the point being made. Okay, so next, let us go to the next paragraph. Okay. Now, the next theme in this paragraph is human life offers liberation through a karma. This is paragraphs 2 and 3. How there is karma bandhana, and it is only in the human form of life we can attain freedom from karma bandhana through a karma. Through a karma we can attain this. So let us see paragraph 2 and 3. Other life forms are also subject to birth and death. It's not that only human life is having birth and death. Other life forms are there. But when the living entity attains a human life, he gets a chance to get free from the chains of karma. So in the other life forms, as they are evolving, they are going through the cycle of birth and death. But once you get the human form of life, it is the junction by where you can come out of this cycle of birth and death. No other form you can come out of the cycle of birth and death. Now, you can come from the chains of karma. Now, Prabhupada explains what is karma. Karma, akarma, and vikarma are clearly explained in the Bhagavad Gita, especially in the 4th chapter. Actions that are performed in terms of one's prescribed duties are mentioned, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures, is called karma. So, Prabhupada defines here karma. Actions which free one from the cycle of birth and death are called akarma. And actions that are performed through the misuse of one's freedom and that direct one to the lower forms are called as vikarma. Of these 3 types of action, that which frees one from the bondage of karma is preferred by intelligent men. That is akarma. Akarma means action which doesn't lead to any reactions. Ordinary men wish to perform good work in order to be recognized and achieve some higher status in this world or in heaven. But more advanced men want to free altogether from the actions and reactions of work. So ordinary people want to do pious actions so that they get pious reactions in the form of heavenly enjoyment. But more intelligent men, they do actions by which they never get any reactions. That is by Bhakti Yoga. Intelligent men know that both good and bad work equally bind one to material miseries. If you do good work, then to enjoy the fruits, you have to take birth. And when you enjoy the fruits, you will automatically create bad karma. And to suffer that bad karma, again you have to take birth. Consequently, they seek that work which will free them from the reactions of good and bad work. Such liberating work is described in the pages of Sri Isopanishads. Okay, Parth Guruji, you have any questions regarding the first paragraph or the second paragraph which we are discussing now?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I had a question regarding that verse, the earlier verse you had showed.
Okay, what is the question?
Here, taking Guru as his Lord and very self. What is the meaning of taking Guru as his very self? What's the meaning?
This you can sometimes metamorphically understand that, sometimes the mother tells a child, that you are my heart and soul. The mother tells. It's not that the child's soul, is the mother. Mother is also individual soul. The child is also that. But, because the child is very dear to, the mother, and the child is oneself, in one sense, the part and parcel of the mother, because he has come from the mother, he or she. So sometimes she says, so similarly, the soul is part and parcel of Krishna. In that sense, one worships the Lord as everything. You are my everything. In that sense, we should understand. Vasudeva Sarvamati Sahamatma Sudurlabha. Everything is Vasudev. Mahatmana Sumam Partha Devim Prakritim. No, not that. Bahunam Janmanamante Gyanavan Mam Prapadante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sahamatma Sudurlabha. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. You are my everything. So this kind of feeling that for me the Lord is everything. And that is the state of selfless love. So in that sense, it is mentioned here, Isham Guru Devatma. and should fully worship in pure devotion. This is selfless love. So that is how we should understand. Okay, we are on the second paragraph now, and
Thank you, Prabhu.
we discussed this paragraph about how one can become free from the cycle of birth and death. There is another question. Okay, Lata Mataji, you have a question? Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, can you share the screen?
Yeah.
In the paragraph which we are reading, the definition of karma.
Oh, we'll
It
come
is-
to that. I'll be defining the concepts of karma, karma, vikarma very soon. I just wanted
Okay.
to read the paragraph and then discuss that.
Thank you,
Okay,
Prabhu.
so we'll come to that. Okay, now we are discussing that very thing. Now, especially when we study the Gita concepts, in Sanskrit, words have multivalent meanings. Valency means, they go in different multi-valence. Valency is, going in different directions. So words have multivalent meanings. So there are multivalent meanings of the word karma. So karma in a general sense, any action is karma. Sometimes the father might tell the son, he's lazy, he's not doing, do some work, do some karma, you might say. So that is in a general sense, it is mentioned. And, sometimes you can use the term karma to mean, I remember once I was visiting with a senior devotee to a hospital to meet a doctor, and a patient just entered. He had left the hospital because he had met with an accident and he had just recovered. And as he left the hospital and he went back, he was again being driven. Again, he met with an accident, and again he was back in the hospital. And he spoke. My karma is very bad, he said. See me. So there, when he used the word karma, he meant that karma means reaction. So I am suffering due to my karma. So that time when you use the term karma, you use it in a reaction sense. Their karma means reaction. And then when you say, nobody can escape the law of karma, then karma refers to the system of action and reaction. And then karma in a Vedic sense can mean sukarma, vikarma, and akarma. And this is what Prabhupada is referring in the purport. Sukarma means actions which are done according to our prescribed duties. And vikarma is actions which are not scripture, these elevators, actions which, are not done as per the injunctions of Vedas, which lead to sinful reactions, which lead to hell. These lead to heaven. These are pious actions, these are sinful actions. Pious actions give pious reactions, sinful actions give sinful reactions. And akarma, of course, also it has, just like this karma has 4 meanings, akarma has 2 meanings. Akarma means, not doing any action. And this is what Krishna also tells Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Verses in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna speaks about it. First is 2.47. Karma nivadhikarasya. You have adhikar to do your swakarma for Kshatriya, but without desiring the food. Ma karma phala hetur, but you do your actions without desiring food. When the karma phala comes, don't think you are the cause of it, but because ultimately there is daiva. And mate sangosti akarmani. So akarma here means not doing your duties. But here, karma is used in a sense where you do actions which bring no reactions. And remember the a prefix which is there, karma, is not modifying action, as in the first meaning. Here, the first meaning is karma. Karma means action, and akarma, no action. It is not modifying action in the first meaning, but second meaning. The karma, when we do, there is no reaction. There is no reaction. That is akarma. Akarma means action which doesn't bring any reaction. So Prabhupada is using the multivalency word of the word karma in this fourth sense, in the Vedic sense, in the Varnashram perspective which is used. So here he is speaking about karma, vikarma, and akarma. Karma are actions performed according to prescribed duties, actions performed without, using one's own free will and without as per sanction of Vedas, which leads to hell. This leads to heaven. And here karma means action which free from the cycle of birth and death. So this refers to pure devotional service. So this is what Prabhupada is referring now. So I hope now the concept of karma, akarma, and vikarma is clear. Now in the next paragraph, Prabhupada elaborates a little more on akarma. The instructions of Sri Isopanisad are more elaborately explained in the Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita is Gita Upanishads. It's the essence of all the Upanishads. Sometimes called as the Gita Upanishads, the cream of all Upanishads. In the Bhagavad Gita 3:9-16, the person or akarma without executing the prescribed duties mentioned in the Vedic literature. This literature can regulate the working energy of the human being in such a way that he can gradually realize the authority of the Supreme Being. When he realizes the authority of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva or Krishna, it is to be understood that he has attained the state of positive knowledge. In this purified stage, the modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance cannot act, and he is able to work on the basis of Naishkarmya. Such work does not bind one in the cycle of birth and death. So Prabhupada has introduced the concept of Naishkarmya. So we will now try to understand this Naishkarmya again from the Varnashram perspective and from the Bhakti perspective. It's a very important concept. Now, the state of Naishkarmya or akarma was mentioned. So, in the Bhagavad Gita second chapter, especially 2.12 to 2.30, Krishna does the analysis between matter and spirit called as Sankhya. You're not this body or the spirit soul. And after explaining this, then he speaks about Karma Kanda 2.31 to 37, where although this is the first level of Gyan, but you do actions as per Vedas, but you desire the fruits. It is called a Sakama Karma. But then there is a transition verse, 2.38 and 2.39. Now he tells, Eshate abhita sanke buddhi yoge tumam shunu. Buddhya yukto yapartha karma bandham prahasasi. 2.39 is a very important verse, because there Sankhya is a new term, yoga is a new term used, and buddhi is a new term used, and then karma bandhan. So here buddhi yoga means that you do actions, intelligence used to realize the self, buddhi yoga, through nishkama karma yoga. You do actions based on your nature, the subtle nature, and those actions are prescribed in the Vedas, and those actions you do without desiring the fruits. So nishkama karma yoga, by doing, because you don't desire the fruits, the subtle body gets purified, and the jnana element increases. And when you become a jnana nishta is a sthita prajna, then you will realize the self. Then you attain the state of Naishkarmya. Or you can directly use the intelligence, buddhi, to understand Bhagavat Gyan, Bhagavat Sambandhit Gyan, which is Bhakti Yoga. So he engaged the body in practicing sadhana bhakti, engage the senses in the service of the Lord, by which you can directly realize the self. Not only you'll realize the self, you'll realize the supreme self also. But here in the process of Nishkam Karma Yoga, you first realize the self, and then through the meditation on the super self, you realize through the path of Ashtanga Yoga or Jnana Yoga, and then the Bhakti Yoga. That is a progression in chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the Bhagavad Gita. So that is Naishkarmya. And in 3.4, Krishna says, Na karmanam anarambhan naishkarmyam purushoshnate na cha sanyasanadeva siddhim samadhi gacchati. So without performing of the prescribed duties, karmanam anarambham, a person cannot attain purity. Purushas naishkarmyam na ashnute. Just by renunciation of activities, sanyasanadeva, an impure person cannot attain perfection. Na cha siddhim samadhi gacchati. So let me explain this now. Now, after Krishna speaks, the Eshate Abhitaha Sanke in 2.39, what are the glories of Buddhi Yoga? 2.40 and 41 he brings out. And then he contrasts Buddhi Yoga, work done in Buddhi Yoga, to Karma Kanda, 2.42, 43. And 44 mentions how one whose consciousness is absorbed in Bhoga and Aishwarya, he cannot attain Samadhi. And that's why transcend the Karma Kanda portions and be situated in the knowledge, Atmavan, Traigunya Vishaya. And then in 2.47, he gives how one should work in Nishkama Karma Yoga without desiring the fruits. And 2.47 to 53, he explains Nishkama Karma Yoga, where one does actions, Karma Yoga, as per Varnashram, without desiring the fruits. And by doing this, his heart is getting purified. He gets rid of both good and bad reactions. Ube sukrute dushrute, buddhi yukto ya jahatiya, 2.51, 50 and 51 verses speak. And then it speaks about how when Nishkama Karma Yoga matures and the subtle body gets completely purified because you don't desire the fruits. So there is purification of the subtle body. And when the subtle body gets completely purified, you become a Sthita Pragya or a self-realized soul. And then Arjuna will ask the question, what are the symptoms of a Sthita Pragya? So this is the state when Nishkama Karma Yoga matures, you attain the state of Naishkarmya. And Ghata Sangasya Muktasya Jnana Avasita Chetasa Yagyaya Acharita Karma Samagram Pravilate. Devoid of the results of desire for results, Muktasya, free from attachment, Gata Sangasya, absorbed in knowledge, Jnana Avastita Chetasa, and engaged in actions of Yagya, actions for the pleasure of Yagya. Yagya Acharita Karma, he does not acquire karmic reaction. Samagram Pravilate. So this is the state of Naishkarmya. This is Prabhupada's translation. Now, I am explaining how this state of Naishkarmya or Akarma in Bhakti Yoga, it is mentioned. So one begins Sadhana Bhakti. Now, Sadhana Bhakti begins with the stage of Shraddha. Shraddha means pure faith. It is referring to Sharnagati. And before that, we are accumulating Shraddha, by which, we have our conditioned nature, and we are, by engaging in the Angas of Sadhana Bhakti, and based on our conditioned nature, we are engaging our conditioned nature in maintaining this body, or we have liking for some things to do because we have that conditioned inclination, mental inclination, we are doing those activities. But Sarva Dharman Parityaja means one doesn't desire anything except fulfilling the desire of the Lord. That means he's free from the conditioned state. There is no karma avaran or jnana avaran happening. So that is pure Shraddha. And at that stage, sadhana bhakti begins. And you associate with sadhus who will explain you how to perform bhajan. Shuddha bhakti bhajan they will attain, mention. And when you attain the stage of Nishta, then you have attained the stage of Naishkarmya. You have attained the state of Naishkarmya. And from Nishtha onwards, these higher stages, Ruchi, Asakti come, and one attains the Supreme Personality of Godhead at the stage of Bhava and Prema. So this is the state of Naishkarmya. So, any questions on paragraph 2 and 3, which we discussed about the concept of the multivalency of the term karma and the concept of Naishkarmya? Any questions or clarifications? I hope it was clear what is Naishkarmya and the multivalency of the term karma. Any questions on this? Okay, so then we'll go to the next paragraph, and the theme is Vedas lead ultimately to karma. The Prabhupada's statement, Prabhupada spoke about the Varnashram perspective of how one should do sukarma. He used the word karma, but specifically it can mean sukarma. Now, actually, the Vedas don't prescribe this gradual progression. Actually, one has to only do devotion. And Prabhupada begins that paragraph. Actually, no one has to do anything more than render devotional service to the Lord. That is directly a karma. So the Vedas directly lead to a karma. However, in the lower stages of life, one cannot immediately adopt the activities of devotional service, nor one can completely stop fruitive work. A conditioned soul is accustomed to working for sense gratification for his own selfish interest, immediate or extended. An ordinary man works for his own sense enjoyment, and when this principle of sense enjoyment is extended to include to his society, nation, humanity in general, it assumes various attractive names such as altruism, socialism, communism, nationalism, humanitarianism. Prabhupada is saying these isms are certainly very attractive forms of karma bandhana, karmanic bondage. So it's like a, you can have sometimes a gloves, but inside there is iron and you punch it. Outside it looks very nice. Inside you get the same, punch. So similarly, these all altruism, socialism, communism, nationalism, they look so nice, but they are what? Attractive forms of karma bandhana. But the Vedic instruction of Sri Isopanishads is that if one actually wants to live for any of the aboisms, he should make them God-centered. There is harm in becoming a family man or an altruist or a socialist, a communist, a nationalist, or a humanitarian, provided one executes his activities in relation with Ishavasya, God-centered conception. So, Prabhupada is explaining now, ultimately, one should, if someone is obeying an Annakshetra. Now, Annakshetra is a very pious activity which is recommended in the Vedas. The Varnashram. So, this attractive form of karma bandhana has to be done in relationship with Ishavasya principle. So, how we can do that? We can open an Annakshetra where we offer the bhoga to Vishnu or Krishna, and we distribute prasad. So this becomes direct devotional activity, and there will be no karma bandhana. And even those who partake the prasad, they also will get bhakti. So this is how we should do. Prabhupada is explaining here. There is no much discussion on this verse about, but in the next paragraph, there is a very important principle which I wanted to discuss, which is coming in the next paragraph. Now, paragraph 5. Any questions you have about paragraph 4? Any questions, any clarifications? Paragraph 4 is relatively easy. Okay, paragraph 5. Who will read? I'd like to see some volunteer read. Paragraph 5. Yes, Parthasarathi Prabhuji. One second, yeah.
Hare Krishna. In the
Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita 2:40, Lord Krishna states that God-centered activities are so valuable that just a few of them can save a person from the greatest danger. The greatest danger of life is the danger of gliding down again into the evolutionary cycle of birth and death among the 8.4 million species. If somehow or other a man misses the spiritual opportunity afforded by his human form of life and falls down again into the evolutionary cycle, he must be considered most unfortunate. Due to his defective senses, a foolish man cannot see that this is happening. Consequently, Sri Isopanisad advises us to exert our energy in the spirit of Isavasya. Being so engaged, we may wish to live for many, many years. Otherwise, a long life in itself has no value. A tree lives for hundreds and hundreds of years, but there is no point in living a long life. There is no point in living a long time like trees, or breathing like bellows, or begetting children like hogs and dogs, or eating like camels. A humble, God-centered life is more valuable than a colossal hoax of a life dedicated to godless altruism or socialism.
Very, very heavy statement. A humble, God-centered life is more valuable than a colossal hoax of a life dedicated to godless altruism or socialism. So here, Prabhupada is mentioning by living in this Ishavasya principle, Prabhupada is quoting 2.40, where, Neha Bhikramanashosti Pratyavayona Vidyate Salpam Apyasya Dharmasya Trayato Mahato Bhayat. It can save you from the greatest danger. So the greatest danger is to glide in the lower species of life. Because once you glide in the lower species of life, you will take millions of years to come again to the human form of life. And after millions of years evolving through the different levels of consciousness, you have got this human form. And only in this human form, you have got this fortune. It is Sudurlabham, it is Sulabham. Sulabham, you naturally evolve and you get this human form, but it is very, very rare because from the human form of life, you can come out of karma bandhana. But if we do activities based on altruism, socialism, then it will again we have to glide in the lower species. And that is why we need to work in the spirit of Ishavasya principle. Prabhupada is explaining. Now, one thing I would like to ask the audience here. Bhagavad Gita mentions that, 2.40 is mentioning that one will not glide to the lower species of life if it salpamasvasya dharmasya. And in the Krishna, in the 8th chapter, also 6th verse, he says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam gajantente kalevaram tam tam eveti kaunteya sada tad bhavita bhavita. Now, in the case of Maharaj Bharat, we see that he was in contemplation of the deer, and in that consciousness he left and he got a deer's body. But here in this verse, it is mentioned that one will not glide to in the lower species of life. He had performed what to speak of dharma. He was performing pure devotion and he was in the bhava stage. So how do you reconcile between these two verses of the Bhagavad Gita, 2.40 and 8.6? What is their answer? How do you reconcile? Who is MRSD? Can they write their full name so that I can realize? Mohan Rup Shama Prabhu, what? Yes?
Yes, Prabhuji. Sorry, I am Mohan Shamdas only. Sorry, I was traveling, so I'm not able to.
Yeah.
So, although Bharat Maharaj got the deer body, but uh, his consciousness was active, right? He could able to remember the old things, so he could able to continue the devotional services.
Yeah. So, although, that principle was kept intact, yam yam vapi swaran bhavam, but even this principle was kept intact, that although he glided in the lower species of life, so he was not in dear consciousness. His body was not in dear consciousness. So he was conscious about his previous life. And that's why even in that deer's body, he was living in the hermitages where the sadhus used to live. He used to hear katha, and he was performing tapasya of only eating dry leaves. So although he got a deer's body, he did not, his consciousness was still kept intact by Krishna. He did not get a deer consciousness. So that's how, both these principles were maintained. So here in the slides, regarding paragraph 5, I mentioned that there are different types of dharma. This is based on the verse Savaya Pumsam Paro Dharma 2.126 in the Bhagavatam. So there is adharma, which is because of avidya we perform. This is the path of sense enjoyment. Without following, varnashram, it will lead us to hell. It will lead to hell. Then there is aparadharma. Aparadharma. And within this, there is the nivritti marg and the pravritti marg. The path of sense enjoyment, which ultimately leads to dharma, artha, kama, and swarga up to satyaloka. And the path of renunciation, nivritti marg, which leads to impersonal Brahman, liberation. But there is something called as the paradharma. The paradharma is savai pumsan parodharma. Yato bhaktir adokshaje. Ahetuki apratiyata yayatma suprasiddhi. By which we perform sadhana bhakti and attain prema bhakti or bhava bhakti and attain Golok Vrindavan. So, the glory of the bhakti movement, especially the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, who has come to give us prema dhan through the Nam Sankirtan process, is that he is directly lifting us from this level to this level. But in the Vedic culture, they used to go through this path of Nishkama Karma Yoga, become Sthita Pragya, and then take up to the path of Gyan or Ashtanga Yoga, attain liberation. And in this path, when they are there, or even in the Nishkama Karma Yoga path, there in coming in touch with the sadhus, they can take up to bhakti. So we practice right now a combination of, the path of not exactly the pravritti marg, because we have subtle body and there are impressions and vasanas, and we have a nature as per our swabhava. And we are practicing some core devotional activities. And we need to balance our conditional activities and constitutional activities. And slowly, the more we do constitutional activities and the more we become free from the condition. The conditional activities also should be done in a very detached spirit and dovetailing them to, directly to Krishna or to Krishna consciousness. And slowly, when we surpass the conditioning, then when we are situated on the transcendental platform, then we practice what is, paradharma, that is Shuddha Bhakti, Shuddha Sadhana Bhakti, by which we can attain Bhava or Prema Bhakti. So that is being discussed here in this paragraph. Okay, the next paragraph theme is in the Isopanishads. Paragraph 5 speaks about without God, everything is vain. So, which paragraph we discussed? 4, yeah. Ultimately, Vedas Rasya. When we discussed paragraph 5, begin by bringing God into sense gratificatory life. That was P5. Humble God-centered life. Yeah. Now, without God, everything is in vain. This is P6, paragraph 6. Yeah. Paragraph 6, who will read? Yes, Lata Mataji. Yeah, unmuted you, I guess.
Prabhu, I couldn't see the screen yet.
Okay, now you're not able to see the screen. I'm sharing the screen.
I'm not able to see, Prabhu. I don't know about others.
Okay, let me once again try. Now?
I'm not able to see, Prabhu, but I can read from book. Is it okay?
Yeah, you can read from the book. Yeah, it's always better to have the book. I'm also referring to the book here.
When altruistic activities are executed in the spirit of Sri Isopanisad, they become a form of karma yoga. Such activities are recommended in Bhagavad Gita 18.5 to 9. For they guarantee their executed protection from the danger of sliding down into the evolutionary process of birth and death. Even though such God-centered activities may be half finished, they are still good for the executor because they will guarantee him a human form in his next birth. In this way, one can have another chance to improve his position on the path of liberation.
Liberation. So, as I was mentioning, this very important concept that even karma yoga, neha bhikramanashrosti pratyavayo na vidyate salpam apyasya dharmasya trayato mahato bayat. This is a very important verse. This verse is 2.40. Yeah. So it's not that only bhakti activities, salpam apyasya dharmasya trayato mahato bayat. Even if one is practicing nishkama karma yoga, whatever he has done, in the next life, he'll continue, performing nishkama karma yoga and further elevate. And this also applies to Jnana Yoga path or to Ashtanga Yoga path. It applies to that also. And especially in the path of bhakti, if he has taken to the path of bhakti in the next life, he will continue his devotion. So Prabhupada in the purport is mentioning about how this karma yoga, in the form of karma yoga, when they are executed in the spirit of Isopanishads, then such activities will guarantee the executor free from all danger in gliding in the evolutionary process of birth and death. And if they are half finished also, still he'll be guaranteed a human form of birth. And this applies to all paths. Please remember that. It is for Nishkama Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and even Bhakti Yoga. So here also this, I think I forgot to mention, Prabhupada is mentioning that Isopanishads advises to exert our energy in the spirit of Ishavasya. And if you do that, then you can desire to live a long, long life. Otherwise, your life is, your long living is only going to create more and more karma bandhana. And Prabhupada is giving the example of these trees who live for long, long life. And the Bhagavatam verse is there. I think by mistake I did not organize the slides. The Bhagavatam verse is here. Tarva kim na jivanti, vastra kim na shashantyuta, na khadanti na medanti, kim grame pashuvu pare. Do not the trees live long life? Tarva kim na jivanti. Do not the bellows breathe? Vastra kim na shashantyuta. Do not the village animals and animal like men eat and mate? Na khadanti na medanti, kim grame pashuvu pare. So trees live longer than human beings sometimes. So what is the use of those trees living like that? And then what is the use? You might say the trees don't breathe. Okay, but the bellows, blacksmiths also breathe. But what is the point in that? And they cannot eat and mate. So animals also eat and mate, and they do better than humans. So what is the worth of such a life if it is not exerted in the form of Ishavasya principle? So here in paragraph 5 also there is a very important theme and concept which is mentioned that we should spiritualize a paradharma. We should spiritualize a paradharma. And I'm quoting this verse from the from the Gita, where Krishna, after explaining you're not the body or the spirit soul, dehinosmin yata dehe, kaumaram yovanam jata, tata dehantar prapti, dhiras tatrana muhyate. O son of Kunti, Kaunteya, the experience of the sense objects, matra sparsha, gives sensation of cold and heat, hot, happiness and distress, sitoshna, sukha dukkada, always temporary. They are anitya, appearing and disappearing. Agama, apaina. O Bharata, tolerate these experiences of the sense objects. Tam titikshva. So in the Gita 2.13, Krishna has said, you are not the body. And tolerate, the difficulty what you'll face when you'll be killing Bhishma's body, Dronacharya's bodies, those bodies will not going to exist. So tolerate that. But Krishna is addressing Arjuna as what? O Kaunteya, O Bharata. And both these addresses are based on the bodily concept. Because he's son of Kunti. That is a bodily relation. Bharat, because he's coming in the dynasty of King Bharat. So why is Krishna, speaking about you're not the body or the spirit soul, but yet he is, addressing him as Kaunteya and Bharata? Because he's using bodily designation. Why is he using bodily designation after stating you're not the body? The reason is, don't massage or pinch the false ego, but pat it onwards spiritually. So this is the principle also Prabhupada is speaking in the purport here. He's speaking about how all these altruism, nationalism ultimately has to be executed in the spirit of Ishavasya principle. It should be executed in the spirit of Ishavasya principle. And this should be activities which should be done in the form of karma yoga. Now, I can give you two examples to understand this. Once Srila Prabhupada in India, when he was preaching, he went to a akhada. You know what is akhada? Where there are Hanuman akhadas, where there are palwans who do wrestling. And he was giving a talk there to all these people who are all bodybuilders. And then Prabhupada started the talk that, you are following in the footsteps of Hanuman. Hanuman was a great bodybuilder and a wrestler. And he was a great fighter and a soldier in Lord's army. So you're all doing this bodybuilding. It's very good. And while you're lifting weight, you take the name of Lord Ram and lift the weight. So they were attached to the body and building the body. But Prabhupada did not condemn them. He did not pinch their false ego. Nor did he massage, oh, this bodybuilding is very good. He did not say. And he could have preached, you're building this body, but what is the use of building this body? Ultimately, you are not this body. This is all illusion. So that kind of preaching Prabhupada did not do. He strategically preached and patted their false ego that it is good what you're doing bodybuilding, but while lifting your weights, you take the Lord's name. Take the name of Lord Ram. Similarly, Prabhupada in 1971 had come back to India and he was preaching. At that time, there was, the division which happened between India and Bangladesh. And Prabhupada was giving one public talk and he could see that the minds of the people were disturbed because of this, turmoil which was happening in the country. And Prabhupada sensed that. And Prabhupada in that talk mentioned that, this message of the Gita, it is not the message only for Indians. It is for everyone in this world. And if you preach this message, the whole world will become Hindustan. Because now Hindustan or India was again divided and, certain portion became Bangladesh. So Prabhupada, what is this division? This is all based on bodily concept. He did not preach like that. But he patted that ego towards spirituality. And this is the principle Prabhupada is mentioning, how we should, everything, all that energy, we should exert in the spirit of Ishavasya principle. And then Prabhupada is quoting Karma Yoga, which is again discussed in the 18th chapter. Karma Yoga is again discussed in the 18th chapter also. It is discussed in the 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter. But again, in the 18th chapter, Karma Yoga is discussed. But there now something more is added. The modes of nature, the 3 modes knowledge is added. And that's why there is, karta in the mode of goodness, in the mode of passion and ignorance. There is intelligence in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. There is a worker in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. There is tyaga in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. All that he discusses that. So it's again Karma Yoga which is discussed. And then later on, Jnana Yoga is discussed. And then Bhakti Yoga. And then pure devotional service. So in the 18th chapter. So Prabhupada is referring to that verses here in the 5th paragraph here. Okay, there is one question regarding 5th paragraph which we have discussed. Yes, Devahuti Kapil Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, you're talking about patting on that false ego spiritually, right? So you gave the example of a bodybuilder. So we might come across a situation where they want to, we won't be able to preach to them directly, but they would still be eating meat. But we can still pat them spiritually because there are some Hindu bodybuilders who still believe in bhakti and still have their own diet, right? So how do you recommend to handle such situations efficiently?
That requires actually a lot of sensitivity and maturity to deal with them, especially days where things are very difficult, because people are very sensitive to these issues which are going on all over the world.
Yeah.
So we have to deal very sensitively and in a very mature way. Like Prabhupada, when he went to Africa, some of the disciples who were Americans, they were arranging programs only in the Indian community there because they were more favorable, and because they are coming from India land, they are naturally little pious and they're more receptive to hear the sadhu message. And Prabhupada, when he arrived in Africa, they had arranged programs for all these. And Prabhupada said, where are the locals? I want to preach to the Africans, And even Prabhupada disciples who were Americans, who were white-skinned, they had a kind of a discrimination towards, the Africans because they are black-skinned. And that's why they're making this discrimination. And Prabhupada hammered his disciple and said, what is the difference? You are white-skinned, they are black-skinned, but both is bodily consciousness. So immediately hammered them. And then they understood, and then they arranged the, programs for the locals, the Africans. And Prabhupada, the first class when he gave, he addressed that, you're all from Africa and you're having this dark skin. Even Krishna is dark skinned. He's Sham Sundar. So that's how, he dealt with them. And in fact, the first lecture Prabhupada was about to give, he saw that his sannyas dress, robes, were stolen. And when he went for the class, he saw that some African was wearing that dress and sitting. You cannot do that, he said. You cannot steal the cloth of a sadhu, he said. And then he gave this lecture. So Prabhupada was very sensitive, to these issues, and he dealt in such a way that he doesn't pat the ego or pinch the ego, but massage the ego towards spirituality. And there is a very famous instance of His Holiness Bhakti Tirth Maharaj. He was an Afro-American brought out in that culture, and he took up to Krishna consciousness. And among proper disciples also, they were discriminating. And Maharaj was little, he could sense that, and he went and asked Prabhupada. So Prabhupada gave a very heavy answer to him. And that was like a turning point for him. If they are identifying on the bodily consciousness, and if you also, stick on to it, then what's the point? Prabhupada said something like that. I don't recollect exactly the words. So you have to ultimately transcend the bodily consciousness. So Prabhupada used both strategies even in outside preaching and within the community of devotees in ISKCON. So Prabhupada was very sensitive in dealing. Once one of the temple presidents came and complained to Prabhupada that this GBC leader and sannyasi is not chanting his rounds. Prabhupada immediately fired the temple president very heavily. Do you think Arjuna was chanting his rounds on the battle of Kurukshetra? He was busy shooting arrows. This temple president thought, what is this? Prabhupada was heavily defended the sannyasi. And then when this temple president went, he secretly called the GBC and sannyasi and chastised him. That I know you're busy executing the duties, but it is also important that you set an example by chanting your rounds and set the example, So he carefully dealt so that temple president doesn't find fault with the sannyasi. So there he hammered him, and here he, nicely he defended the GBC sannyasi. But when the GBC sannyasi came, when Prabhupada called him, he nicely hammered him. So Prabhupada had that knack, and it requires maturity and sensitivity to deal with these things. So that is what I can say. I hope this is satisfactory to you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the last paragraph now. Now the last paragraph theme is, of course, there's one, Prabhupada has spoken about this, spiritualizing all isms. Sense gratification plus God becomes karma kanda, and altruism plus God becomes spiritual altruism. I spoke about Annakshetra examples also. Now the last paragraph. How one can execute God-centered activities is elaborately explained in the Bhaktisashtri Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. We have rendered this book into English as Nectar of Devotion. We recommend this valuable book to all who are interested in performing their activities in the spirit of. So now Prabhupada directly from Karma Yoga, he comes to Bhakti Yoga, directly Bhakti Yoga here. And this paragraph is directly speaking about how to execute directly Bhakti Yoga. And I mentioned in my, here, Parodharma, that is directly taking up to Bhakti Yoga. So this is also, Nishkama Karma Yoga is also leading to the state of Naishkarmya. But coming to the state of Naishkarmya by Bhakti Yoga, I explained this chart, how one begins sadhana bhakti and attains Naishkarmya at the stage of Nishtha. When Shraddha also is very much matured. That is the Madhyamadhikari stage. And I explained the Naishkarmya state from 2.47 to 5.3. So now in the last paragraph, Prabhupada directly speaks about, taking up to Bhakti Yoga and the Angas of Bhakti Yoga. So that ultimately is the message of the Vedas. Vedeshu durlabam adurlabam atma bhakto. Ultimately, the Vedas give the path of a karma, that is pure devotional service. So that was the last theme in this paragraph. This purport and the themes in the paragraphs are quite simple. So the most important concept was who suffers the misery of death, the soul which is attached to the body. And because of this avidya, the prakshepatmika and the avarnatmika shaktis, we are caught in the external energy. Bhayam dvitiya abhinivesh. And that's why viprayo smriti, we have forgotten our identity as soul. And that's why whatever is happening in the mind screen, our consciousness is caught in that, and we go through the misery of suffering in the cycle of birth and death. And the solution is to turn our consciousness towards the Lord, Samukya. And now we are Vaimukya, and that is by bhajan, pure devotion. And here we saw the concept of karma, akarma, and vikarma, and especially karma, which has activities. We saw in a generic sense, in a reaction sense, and then in a sense of action and reaction, karma, and then in a varnashram sense, where karma means sukarma, vikarma, and then akarma. Akarma is, again, that has two meanings. So that, and how nishkarmya from a varnashram perspective and from a bhakti perspective, we saw, and how when everything types of isms are doubted in the spirit of Ishavasyam, then it leads to liberation. And the highest conclusion Prabhupada is bringing up in the last paragraph is to perform directly Bhakti Yoga and performing the angas of Bhakti Yoga. And that's why Prabhupada refers to nectar of devotion. Completes discussion on mantra 1. Tomorrow we will take up mantra 2. If you are living in disharmony, then what is the result? In disharmony with the Ishavasya principle, that mantra 2 we will discuss tomorrow. So anyone has any questions or clarifications? Okay, there are 2 questions. Barka Rish Prabhuji, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, can you hear, Prabhu?
Yeah, it is a little feeble. Can you speak a little loudly, please?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. No, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Prabhu, you talked about Naishkarmya and Bhakti Yoga, both ways of this akarma. So Naishkarmya, does it mean that it's a complete absence of work, or what is meant by
Okay.
Naishkarmya actually?
So that's what this concept of Naishkarmya has to be very clear. Now, I mentioned the state of Naishkarmya is freedom from reactions. Freedom from reactions. Now, this state you can come by the process of Nishkama Karma Yoga. When you start Nishkama Karma Yoga, you do actions without desiring the fruits and without thinking that I am the doer. So slowly, your subtle body gets purified. And by doing this, what will happen? As the Bhagavad Gita, if you see the verses in the Bhagavad Gita 2.47 to 53, this is where Nishkama Karma Yoga begins. We should not desire the fruits and not think we are the doers. So the sattva increases and the jnana increases. And this is called as Nishkama Karma Yoga. You are not attached to the results and you are maintaining equanimity, both in happiness, distress, success, failure. That is yoga. And you are not attracted to the fruits. Durena avaram karma means, you give up karma kanda, which is spoken in 2.31 to 32. And obey supratadishrita. You become free from all the pious reactions and the sinful reactions by acting in the spirit of Nishkama Karma Yoga. And once you're completely free, you become a Sthita Pragya. That is spoken here. So this is Nishkama Karma Yoga when it matures. Now, Naishkarma is a state when you're free from the reactions of both pious and sinful. From here, you go to Jnana Yoga, where there is inactivity, but also in Ashtanga Yoga there is inactivity, but initially there is activity, Yama, Niyama. But ultimately the soul has to be active because the soul's nature is to be active, and there is Bhakti Yoga. So that progression is explained in the Bhagavad Gita first 6 chapters. Now, when I say how you attain Naishkarmya in the path of Bhakti, is that we perform sadhana Bhakti, but Kleshamani is happening. We are still not free from the reactions of our past activities, nor we are free from the pious reactions. But as we perform sadhana Bhakti, then what will happen? Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. When a bhakti becomes, when we attain naishtiki bhakti, we are free from the reactions of all. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Everything is destroyed. Tada rajastamo bhava kama lobhadasche. Cheteter anavidham. Now the modes of passion and ignorance in the form of calm and love doesn't exist. So that is a state of Naishkarmya we attain by practice of Bhakti Yoga. And there the bhakti begins, pure bhakti begins. So Naishkarmya is just a state of becoming free from the freedom of reactions. So that's why when we are practicing bhakti now, we are still having unlimited impressions of our pious, sinful and sinful activities, and that become an obstacle in the bhakti, practice of bhakti. But with the practice of bhakti, when all this is destroyed, Klesha Agni happens, then our bhakti becomes more intense. And those actions which we perform don't lead to any reactions. So that is how we need to understand.
One more thing, this that paradharma and aparadharma, how actually can you define actually what definition of these two words? Paradharma means related to God, and God related, and aparadharma is our.
No, nothing. Paradharma means pure devotional service. Save punsa paro dharma. Paro is paradharma. Paradharma is pure devotional service.
That para means is God, to God, or what is that
God
para
means
word?
it is to Krishna, not in general sense. Here also in aparadharma, we are performing Nishkama Karma Yoga. We are doing more of our Varnashram duties, and there is also some elements of devotion to Vishnu and Bhakti, following the Varnashram principles. But we are more attached to what Dharma Karta Kama. So there is also Bhakti, one element, because Varnashram means worship of Vishnu. There is worship of Vishnu, but there is more of following of duties based on our swabhava. There is swabhava, there is swadharma and swakarma, and there is swadharma, which is varnashram. But paradharma means directly performing pure devotional service. And one doesn't do duties based on one's nature. So we come to this platform of paradharma only when we become free from our conditioned nature. So there is, in the beginning stages, more of our bhakti practice is Mishra Bhakti. And only when, we come to the point where we don't perform any actions based on our conditioned nature and only perform actions at the 6 glimpse of bhakti, we are on the transcendental platform, then paradharma begins for us also, in that sense.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Devaki Kapil Prabhuji, you have a question? Last question we'll take up. Yes.
Prabhuji, you answered my question in the previous question, Prabhuji. Thanks.
Paradharma? Okay. It's a very elaborate topic and we need to discuss.
No, it's on that, the difference between the Sthita Prajna and Naishkarmya.
Yes, Naishkarmya.
Yeah, I got
Prajna
it.
attains also the state of Naishkarmya. And within the bhakti path, when one comes to the state of Nishta, now, there is no influence of the Rajas and Tamas, and now his actions are very pure and they don't read reactions. And that's why when we're practicing bhakti, we perform some mistakes and we suffer also while practicing bhakti. But at the stage of Nishta, one practices bhakti very meticulously, and that will not, give rise to any reactions. And all his past actions and activities, reactions are all also destroyed by that state. He has attained
Can we call that
Shuddha
Bhakti, Prabhuji?
Yes, from there Shuddha Bhakti begins, actually.
Okay.
Actually, from there Shuddha Bhakti begins. Until then, it is Mishra.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much. So tomorrow we will take up mantra 3. Shri Isopanishads ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.